Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Too Cool for the Comic Shop. I am one of your hosts, Eric Zavinski, and today I'm joined by.
Morning, Crowley.
And Todd Crawford.
And today we'll be discussing the Matrix film franchise. It just had its most recent sequel, The Matrix Resurrections, so what better time to discuss all four live-action films and also an animated feature anthology. It's 5 movies, folks, and we're going to be going through them in order. And without further ado, Todd or Maureen, do you want to tell the people how you got introduced to this series?
I think the thing with The Matrix for a certain period of time is it was kind of just ubiquitous. Like, you couldn't not know about it if you had any television or access to the internet or anything. Like growing up, like I'm pretty like Shrek parodied Bullet Time. Everything did. The Matrix was just everywhere. I remember seeing the video games. Just seeing the movies in stores. On TV was how I first saw them. I actually saw the second first. Then I thought I saw the third. Rewatching it this time, I don't know if I'd ever seen the third. I think I just thought that I did. But I thought I saw the first one last, years later. But I just had exposure to it just by existing.
I guess the second one was so long that you thought it was 2 movies.
Probably.
Maureen, what about you?
I kind of had a similar experience. I agree with Todd that like anybody who doesn't live in a cave, like no pun intended, um, kind of has been exposed to the Matrix at one point in their life, whether it's through like seeing the movies or knowing someone who has, or being exposed to like some kind of pop culture reference that really harkens back to the Matrix. Like the whole series was really groundbreaking in its special effects, and it's just how ambitious it was, and it really has had like a lot lasting effect on pop culture, which crazy enough, I actually hadn't watched them until probably this past year. Like I feel like for the longest time, like I personally was probably not the target demographic of these movies. I don't know, but it was there were ones where I'm like, well, I don't really know where to watch this at. This is like pre-streaming, and now I'm like, well, it's all on HBO Max, so I have no excuse now. But I started watching the first Matrix like around Christmas time, and fun fact, I did not watch any of the first three all in one sitting. So it literally took me like 3 weeks to watch all of these movies, and then the Animatrix I hadn't heard about until yesterday when you guys are like, "Hey, we're going to talk about this tomorrow." I'm like, crap, I gotta watch like another 2 hour movie for tomorrow. So I was just watching it this morning, but yeah, looking forward to this.
That's really funny because I think I'm somewhere in between the two of you, where I had always heard about its prevalence in pop culture, but I actually didn't watch the films until my senior year of college. My dad is a pretty big fan of the original trilogy, so we own them on DVD. So I just finally went to my dad's room, like, I'm watching these. So I like watched all three Matrix films like in the span of 2 days in the summer of 2017. Didn't really retain them very well. So in preparation for the new one coming out, Colton and I rewatched all of them basically the week after Christmas. So actually, Maureen, I think you and I like spiritually linked in that endeavor. And then yeah, the Animatrix I had never seen either. I just watched it and I was like, might as well throw them all together, I guess. So yeah, and then I guess we all went to the theater in the past month because that came out on December 22nd, 2021. So yeah, as far as pop culture things, definitely a more recent addition to getting that off my backlog.
Well, if we just want to jump into it, I think the thing with the first one is, and especially as we get into it, first of all, I don't think any of us, but I'll speak for myself and say that I don't think that I will ever understand the first one and the cultural impact that it had as much as someone who was around before any of the sequels. Because there was a point where this was supposed to be like the next Star Wars, the next huge thing. And I've always personally noted as that movie that was supposed to be great and then had some kind of shitty sequels. So I'll never understand that hype or that fandom at that point in time. I missed out on the MMO and all that stuff. But I think that it says a lot about the first movie that despite that kind of tarnished reputation, people are still interested in the Matrix. It's still relevant, at least to some extent, not as much as it was when it came out, of course. But I think it's just such a good movie and holds up so well that it really kind of carries the entire series. Is that we're always hoping that we get something as good as the first one again.
I agree. And I think it was an incredibly ambitious movie, especially for the like action genre of like that whole like time period. And from what I remember and like what I've heard and read in my own research, the opinions of like the movies as a whole, and especially like the first one, is very like polarized. Either you have people who are diehard fans and are absolutely obsessed with it, like they, love and admire everything it aspired to be, or yeah, people who just weren't that into it and just kind of disliked it because it was like for an action movie, it was like, oh, we're getting stuck having to think too much, or it just wasn't accessible enough, or people just want like shoot 'em up action and don't really want to have a philosophy lesson. So I think at first when I first watched The Matrix, I really wasn't that impressed. I don't know. And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized this is actually like a solid 10 of a movie. And I was just thoroughly impressed with like how much philosophy and how much thought is actually put into like the free will versus choice and the reality and all the characters. And um, I was definitely blown away. And it, like you said, it definitely does hold up very well.
Yeah, I mean, The Matrix is definitely the best. It's one of those franchises that, yeah, it spawns a bunch of sequels, but the original really can't be topped. I mean, because you really do see that in every sequel that came after, especially the most recent one, they're always harkening back to something that was introduced in the first film. The first film introduces like a ton of not just iconic moments, but also just concepts that basically the rest of the series is based on, including the animated shorts in the Animatrix. Almost everything directly draws from that first movie. And the first movie, a lot of people think it's a high octane action movie, which it is in part. But there's also like a solid 45 minutes of exposition in that film. There's a lot of philosophical back and forth and a lot of just world building in that first movie, which I think, and maybe the pop culture mainstream, people don't think of that part. They think of more the effects and the action, which were certainly trend setting as well. But by and large, half that movie is just kind of like a think piece. And I think that's what really struck me rewatching it is that, yeah, it's an action movie, but by no means like a Michael Bay fare. It is it's filled with a lot of talking.
Right. And I feel like with at least this movie in specific, with how many different concepts are embedded in this movie, it's almost one of those like films that you kind of have to rewatch again and again. It was kind of like my experience in Dune. Like, although Dune was definitely a lot less philosophical than these movies are, but upon rewatching, there are certain things in certain parts of the philosophy you do pick up on upon rewatch, and like I definitely have been falling in love with this more the more I've been looking into it.
Well, I think that, and I think even the Wachowskis, uh, I don't want to say they're confused or whatever, but I think that they put too much importance on the kind of pseudo philosophy in these movies. Um, in the sense that I heard this on a forum. People think that people love the Matrix because of these ideas that it has and these concepts, and that's definitely kind of a spice peppered in there. But the meat and potatoes of it is that it's pretty much just a perfectly executed hero's journey story. It's a very basic plot structure of the hero discovering his true identity and power and then assuming that role by the end of the film. And then you got the action stuff, but really the philosophical concepts are just kind of sprinkles on top of that. And I think that I think it helps, but it's always in service of the story, like the overarching plot, I should say. Whereas in the sequels, I think, especially the second one, they get far too caught up in the story servicing uh, these kind of concepts that they're trying to communicate.
No, I can agree with that too. It kind of gets more convoluted after the first film in a lot of different ways. Also, the second film felt like it had more action too. So the second film just felt like smorgasbord. That first one is just kind of like they actually got the pacing right between the story and the action, and been trying to replicate that, or maybe they haven't been trying, arguably, to replicate that balance that they had in that first film. Um, the first film I also like because it kind of leaves things a little bit more to the viewer's imagination. Big problem with the sequels for me is that whenever you step out of the Matrix into the other stuff that's going on in the sequels, it's just so much less interesting to me, and it really kind of turns into like a underbaked rebellion story. But this first film, it's really mostly not that. Like you said, Todd, it's mostly just a hero's journey story, and most of it is spent in the Matrix, which I think is honestly just more entertaining film because of it.
I also, I mean, one thing everybody talks about Keanu in it, but especially I didn't watch the first one again for this review because I don't need to. But I think that especially in the sequels, the second one particularly, Lawrence Fishburne, as much credit as he does get, he's criminally underrated even with all of that acclaim because he fucking carries so much of the second movie for me.
Yeah, I know. And then I guess just makes me think what a misfire it is that he's like barely in the third one as well. And you can feel that absence in the same way that you feel his presence in the first and especially the second one.
Yeah, and honestly, I was so badly hoping he would show up in Resurrections at some point. I'm like, I know the story wouldn't make sense, but for once, can the plot just bend to make this happen? But it did not, and I waited. And that was probably like the most disappointing part of the fourth movie. But we'll get to that. But what did you guys think of? I guess moving on to Reloaded.
Real quick, the one thing I do want to say about the first movie before moving on to that one is that what really struck me lately thinking about it is that really the Matrix invented Christopher Nolan. Or like think about like Inception or something. I was like, oh, this is like the Matrix, and that comparison never really hit me. And then like rewatching the sequels, it just felt so obvious. It was like, oh, this is like the first Nolan movie in a way, as we know them today.
Yeah, I mean, the world within a world concept, I don't know if they've really explored that in cinema quite like it before 1999, to my knowledge.
Yeah, Matrix Reloaded is a lot of movie. I think that it's a how I would compare the sequels is kind of like the Star Wars prequels, where I think there's a lot of potential, there's a lot of things to like, and there's a lot of things to hate, and you can focus on about any of it. With that said, I think that Matrix Reloaded is by far the Attack of the Clones of the series.
I can see that, and I think from what I hear too, what's tough about these next two installments is that they were released basically like back to back, right, within like a 6 month period.
Yeah, no, that's too. And it was also in 2003. So 2003 had three Matrix films. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not really sure who thought that was a good idea.
yeah, well, it's definitely a lot. Like I know, not to go too far off topic, but Lord of the Rings was like basically released like year after year after year. So like that's very taxing on the writers, on the directors, on the um, actors, and just everybody involved. So I can see like with Reloaded for me, like some parts were kind of rushed and kind of half baked, and it definitely didn't stack up to the first one, or even like like Resurrections. And I was even thinking about this like last night, and like honestly, with it being very Attack of the Clonesies, as Todd said, I'm like I could have just gone from the Matrix to Resurrections and just been fine, even though like certain parts of like the newest one wouldn't have made sense. But I'm like, nah, I don't know. I was just very underwhelmed by these next two.
There's a lot of action in the second one in Reloaded, and I swear to God, that car chase towards the end of the film is like the longest car chase that I'm aware of in movies. It's like 20 minutes long.
It's nuts. I was
So if,
watching
if that's what you're here for, just some long ass action scenes, the second one has that in spades.
I was watching a video on that today and how they had to build like a fake strip of highway for it, and how they edited cars in for the transitions, so that like when the camera cuts, it looks as though it's about to collide with a car to make it more intense and stressful. And that's what I kind of
Wow.
hate about the second movie, is that there's so many parts of it on a technical level that are so impressive and cool, and I respect so much on a filmmaking level, but I don't enjoy watching it. I don't enjoy watching like some of the fights are just like not just the highway scene, but the fights in general. Like I can tell the choreography's good. I can tell it's well directed. I appreciate that, but I'm not enjoying myself. Just to be purely subjective, I get bored as shit. Not to mention the boring talking scenes, which are not that interesting or inventive or smart to me.
Yeah. I think scenes in Reloaded just drag. Like sometimes even the action scenes drag. I think my favorite part of Reloaded is when Neo fights Agent Smith, and it feels like a PlayStation 2 game where he's fighting like 100 of them, and it just feels like I'm watching a video game, a fight in a cutscene or something. And I feel like that's where The Matrix is at its best, when it's really pulpy and cheesy and like a video game. In some respects, it might have been a better video game franchise over a movie franchise. I think, which is extra funny, which we'll get to later. Um, but then after that, once you get to the midway point, everything just kind of drags and Reloaded more and more.
Well, I think that's our generational gap with this series. Because, like, I get what you're saying, and part of me agrees, and that goes into my thoughts on Resurrection, too. On a personal level, I agree. But, like, historically, I can't imagine being in the theaters thinking, like, The Matrix was the future of Hollywood cinema, and then seeing 100 PS1 looking Agent Smiths. That's a lie. It's probably PS2 looking Agent Smiths. And just how
Right.
fucking ridiculous and stupid it is. I have fun with it, but looking at it from that lens outside of myself, it's sad. It's
Right.
really sad.
Well, and that's the thing, though. See, I look at this property as a franchise and not a single film. And that's, you were getting to that earlier, is that we will never know what it's like to look at The Matrix as a single film and the hype and the kind of prestige around it. Since I look at it as a whole franchise, and I think three-quarters of the franchise is kind of crappy, I kind of like the stupid parts, because at least the stupid parts feel like self-aware and fun, if that makes any sense.
No, I totally agree personally.
I like the when Neo knocks over all the Agent Smiths, it's just like the bowling pin sound. I'm like, this is great.
Oh, it's hilarious. Which, coming off of the first film, especially in like 2003 when that was new, I don't know. I'm wondering, because I don't know what fans thought about at the time. Was this like a Phantom Menace situation where people didn't expect what Reloaded was, or they wanted to go some other way?
I it's funny because, like I said, I've seen the second movie the most for sure. So like I remember a lot about it. I remember never really caring for it. But even as I watched it this time, like I started is with an open mind. I thought maybe I'll be a defender. Maybe I'll be one of the people that really enjoys this one. Hoping to, because I had 2.5 hours to spend on it. And at first, I was enjoying myself quite a bit. The first like 10, 15 minutes. And then they get to like the rave. And it's like, okay, this scene sucks. Everybody makes fun of it. Whatever. Get past it.
Oh, it's so funny.
And as
In a
it
bad
goes,
way, though.
as the movie goes on, it was like the stages of grief, where it was like denial, anger, avoidance. I was looking at my phone, like, and eventually just accepting that the movie just is not very good.
You were bargaining. Should I turn the DVD player off or not?
That was a rave scene for him. That was the bargaining, where it's like, okay, you can have a few bad scenes, but the rest is good, right? No.
The Matrix is just kind of that weird franchise for me where it's like there are parts of it that are genuinely cool and entertaining, and then there are more and more parts as you go through the sequels to me that are just like, oh my god, this is like when you watch a movie drunk because you want to laugh at it, kind of entertaining. Which, has its own merits as well, but I'm not used to those being in the same movie.
I always I go easy on these movies more so than others. And like I said, I'm not saying this is a good movie or even underrated. I think it's got a few great scenes. It's got some good ideas, but overall, it's a misfire. And I'm not going to die on the hill of any of these movies, other than the first. Um, but like, I give the Wachowskis more of a pass, even though really the first movie is the only movie of theirs I've seen that I've genuinely enjoyed because they have ambition and they always go for it. And to me, even though Reloaded is my least favorite of the series, it feels like a double album, and I never get the feeling that they're lazy. Like I said, like the highway fight or in the car chase, whatever you want to call it. Like I'm bored by it, but as I'm watching individual stuff on it, where like Morpheus puts a sword in the side of the truck, and then he uses that as like leverage later, and all this happens, I see how it's well done, and I really respect them as filmmakers, even though I'm not having fun with what they're doing.
Right. I think you were texting me last week and you were like, my fascination is really just more intrigue and respect instead of enjoyment.
Pretty much, yeah. Whereas like a Marvel movie, I'm much more willing to forgive this movie having its philosophical bullshit that's just like, determinism and free will versus destiny, even though it's kind of like entry level philosophy 101. I don't mind that in a Hollywood movie as much because I feel like they're trying their best with all this stuff, as opposed to like Marvel, where it's like, Drax, you're eating Doritos, and I shit my pants. Like, at least this, they're fucking
I mean, yeah.
trying and earning their paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, they are for now. I'm surprised that you say that this is your least favorite of the four because I tell you, this franchise for me is like a downward spiral, but we'll get to that soon.
Yeah, I'm moving on to Revolution. I think this one took the least amount of time, like in the actual Matrix, right? From what I remember, is that what you guys remember too?
Yeah, I don't remember hardly ever being in the Matrix.
Oh my God. Yeah, the Matrix Revolutions, man. There is like half of the film without the main trio of characters, and it turns into a Transformers movie where a bunch of nameless extras fight CGI for an hour.
Like a side
That's why
quest.
I can't stand this movie.
It is something that's tough with the movie. One thing I really like about the movie is you can really see the Metropolis influence, and I appreciate that. And I don't like the guy that's like, Neo, you saved my life. I want to help. He's irritating, but I kind of like
Oh
the
my God,
payoff with
yes.
him. And the sergeant being, he tells the sergeant, I didn't finish training. The sergeant says, neither did I, kid, and dies. That's a fun, pulpy moment for me. I like Link, so I like his wife's little arc in it, because I like both them as a couple. With that said, there's a long part of the movie where you don't get the main characters, like you said, and it is kind of rough because I do not like I said, other than Link and his wife, I don't really like any of these side characters that are just kind of in it to fight.
Yeah, no, it's bizarre. Well, like you said, the first Matrix is like a total hero's journey, and every side character kind of services the hero's journey. But like we're still in Neo's hero's journey. This is like a trilogy, man. And it's like, where is Keanu in this film for like half of it? It's just so weird. I don't know why. It needed to be. You know how the end of Return of the Jedi cuts so expertly between like Endor, the Death Star, and then like Luke and Vader. This movie needed that or something because there's like 15 minutes at a time where you don't spend any moment with the main characters and you're like, where the hell are they? Like, what are they do? It's just so weirdly cut and paste. I don't understand it.
One thing I will say is I really like what they do with Neo and Trinity in this movie.
They just well, it's interesting, right? Because He dies in the second one, and he gives her heart a little squeeze in the Matrix, and she's fine. But it's in this third one, it's like, well, not everything can be perfect for your arc, Neo. So she has to die in like real life. So is that what you're referring to?
No, I more than anything, I liked them on the ship on their own. I liked the crazy passenger and where that went. I like the shot when she turns the lights off, and it's just like the fire from the plasma gun or whatever the fuck it is, lighting it. I like that he gets blinded. I think is a cool little. It's kind of cliche, once again, hero's journey stuff, Messiah figure stuff, but a lot of the Matrix is. I mean, it's built around the allegory of the cave. I mean, it's pretty archetypal, so I don't mind that in a series like this. But all that
Right.
stuff I enjoyed. I don't mind her dying either. I did think about that too, where it's like, well, he saved her before, but I'm guessing there was too many wounds, and he just couldn't do anything about it to undo the punctures. I don't know. I just accept it as a movie thing, to be honest.
Well, it is kind of funny when you think of it as like the movie in which she died and was resuscitated came out in the same year that she died and died. It's a little funny to me. Not that I think it's like a bad choice to have her actually die, but not forever because there's a fourth one now. But
I get what you're
it's an
saying, but
interesting idea there at least.
I get what you're saying, but I didn't personally laugh at it because I don't find it funny when women die.
See, that's the difference. That's the main difference between you and me, Todd.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah, I'm somewhat of a feminist. I don't like when women get murdered.
Oh, I will say, I think the coolest part of this movie is the finale because the Matrix using Neo to kind of get rid of Agent Smith as a virus is just kind of like overrun to the point that no one wants him around anymore. Pretty neat concept. My favorite part of this trilogy is Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith. I just eat up a really good villain. Like, can do an evil laugh without blinking. Like, can just really ham it up, and he hams it up in all three of these movies so goddamn well, and I really enjoy that.
He gets a wild, evil laugh when he converts the Oracle in this one, particularly the scene I was
Oh,
thinking.
I know.
Which I want to say real quick is that I like both Oracles. I know it was a case that they had to recast the elderly cast member who passed away between movies. And I think they did a really good job with it, and they were able to explain why she was reskinned in universe. So that was kind of cool too.
I You can't always explain that kind of thing away. They did not explain it away when Maggie Gyllenhaal was in The Dark Knight. It's like, oh yeah, this just went to a new body. It doesn't really work in the real world, so it's kind of neat that they were able to do that, and just makes me want chocolate chip cookies, man.
I threw him right at the wall. Just kidding. But for real though, I did appreciate that it was a very seamless transition, and it just took like a couple lines of dialogue just to explain it. I'm like, okay, I didn't need like an entire scene for this, but yeah. And as far as Resurrections goes, what did you guys think?
Oh, wait,
Do
wait,
you-
wait. Before, I'm not ready. You
Okay.
can't just bring that
I
on me
was
that
ready.
quickly, Maureen. First of all,
I was
one
excited.
last thing about the Matrix Revolutions. Is anyone surprised by how like abrupt the like ending is in Revolutions? Like it ends after the final battle. It ends in like 30 seconds, and it's like, well, maybe we'll let people out of the Matrix. Anybody find that like kind of odd?
Yeah, it was a little jarring. It just didn't really have like that kind of conclusion or like a moment to get like closure. Just kind of ended, and I'm like,
Right.
okay, is there going to be another one? Like, or what's going? I don't know. I was kind of like stunned.
Exactly. So rewatching them, I was like, oh, no wonder why there's a fourth one, because it feels like there's still a lot of questions about what even happened after this like fight and who was in control and all that stuff, which some of which does get answered. So there's that.
Yeah,
I,
there's more loose ends than Lost.
it felt quick to me, but I think watching the second and third back to back, whereas like they're only like 10, 15 minutes apart, but you feel every one of those minutes in the second compared to the third. And so it felt relatively short in comparison for me in that way.
Right.
I know that they did an MMO that continued the story between movies, and they did the Animatrix. I don't think they wanted to do more movies, but they want to do games and other stuff. So I think they wanted to leave some of it open, is my guess.
It's interesting.
Which
How
doesn't.
popular was this MMO?
I'm not
Like,
sure. It was shut down, so I mean, it wasn't World of Warcraft.
right. Things didn't go super well. Um, I feel like maybe we should talk about the Animatrix just in between Revolutions and Resurrections, just because it largely references certain things in the trilogy.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Full disclosure, I did not play any of the games in preparation for this, so I'm cool with just moving on to the Animatrix
Me
now.
neither. I don't even know what the names of the games are.
Do you guys know the Wachowskis? They had a dominatrix that did shit to them, and I think she's some famous one. And there's been like gossip articles and stuff on how they went to her. So I'm always waiting for them to come out with the dominatrix.
I was gonna say, I was gonna make that joke. Glad you beat me to
Sorry.
it. The Dominatrix. That's actually going to be that's the title. That's the working title for the fifth one.
Oh my gosh.
So
Um, yeah.
I'm
Somebody
gonna
else go
say
ahead.
on the Animatrix, this is a personal thing. I do not like movies like this. They did a similar thing for Halo, where it's like we're gonna get like 9 anime directors to put their take on it, and some are better or worse. And I went to open minded, but for me personally, it's hard to swallow because it's supposed to be in the same universe and canon as the other films, and they look and act almost nothing like them to me at points. Where I'm watching, I'm like, I don't see how this is the same movie as The Matrix Reloaded. Like, it looks nothing like it. It's just completely different. And that's just like, I get it. It's a different interpretation and all that. And that's kind of the fun of it. But for me personally, I just don't. I don't know. I just get kind of OCD about that.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. I will say I don't like it a lot, but it was kind of ahead of its time. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, right? So recently, this past fall, they did something called Star Wars Visions, which was also 9 anime short films. It wasn't all collected as a movie, though. It was 9 separate episodes, basically TV. Another crucial aspect is that it wasn't canon. So they gave Star Wars to a bunch of different anime studios to give their interpretation, which I quite enjoyed. This is kind of basically the Star Wars visions for the Matrix, but like more than 15 years earlier. So I'm kind of impressed that they even attempted it. There are some anime studios attached to this that are really prolific too. I think you have Watanabe, who did Cowboy Bebop. I think did at least one of these, and there's a couple other studios I recognize as well. So they got some talent behind some of these, and then some of them they didn't, and it really shows.
Sadly, I think story wise, what might have been my favorite is aesthetically my least favorite. Where the one with the jogger, I kind of liked, but
Yeah,
it was just like a fun self-contained story. But it was so ugly the way that it was drawn, and I was worried because like at first I was like, oh no, people are gonna think I'm racist because I don't like how the one with the black guy looks. But all the white people look even worse than he does, so I felt vindicated.
it has quite the art style to it. That is actually one of my favorites of the bunch. I think that was called World Record. Um, Then the one before that is Colton and I's favorite program, which was really cleanly animated. It's like the samurai one, where the girl is being tested if she'll come to this guy who wants to stay in the program, wants to stay in the Matrix. I thought that one was really well executed, and I don't really care for much of the other ones, to be honest.
Yeah, I like that one as well. Like I said, it gets into that thing of the samurai. Where it's like this isn't like the Matrix kind of does do that with like the dojo fight, where Neo finds out he knows kung fu and all that. So you can get away with it to a certain extent, but they go so far with it that for me it's hard to see it as the same thing, which I know doesn't like diminish its quality judged on its own merit. but as a viewer, I just struggle with that. But like, I think that was just a good one overall, judging as a short film. And I liked the first two. I didn't love them, but I thought as far as like prequels explaining it, they did well enough. I didn't think it jived with the art style once again at all, the robots and how they looked and stuff. But I still enjoyed it. For me, those four were probably the good ones.
Yeah, I mean, they were interesting. The fact that they gave a two-parter that basically set up the prequel for the world and that the humans are the ones who like destroyed the earth and blotted out the sun. I don't know. There was like a lot of cheesiness to that, those two as well. Just like, oh, humans are so cartoonishly evil. And it's like, I don't know. I wasn't really loving it super much, but the animation was pretty clean. So it was at least something new to look at every 10 minutes.
It went down easy. I wasn't checking my phone like some of the other ones.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it also helps that it's only 90 minutes compared to 138.
I'll say the one where it explains the irritating teenager from the other movies. I liked that one as well, actually.
Kid story.
I liked his short more than his inclusion in the real movies.
I really enjoyed the animation style of that one, particularly like the chase scene. Um, just how like shaky and just how the line work changes, like with to really show motion. I don't know. For me, like art aesthetically, that was just really fascinating.
Yeah, that chase scene is like not something you could convey in live action. I completely
For
agree.
sure.
Like the way they change the lines and just the snappiness of it, it makes it feel like such a fast chase, which you can't really do the same way in live action. So they definitely use the medium to its benefit.
I think overall for me, the Animatrix. It's funny because I probably sound pretty positive on it from what we said so far, but it's probably the movie in the series I'd be least likely to revisit.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think I might, if I ever wanted to, go rewatch the Samurai and the Runner one. They're my two favorite, but other than that, I can't see myself wanting to ever revisit.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Um, I mean, I really enjoyed Beyond. That was the one where the girl was looking for a cat. Is I really like that little pocket of world building where, like, what if there are glitches in the Matrix and people kind of notice these anomalies and stuff. So that was like a really fun idea to play around with that. Like, it doesn't really contribute like a ton to like the whole universe, but it was just a really cool, like, neat little aspect to explore. But yeah, all in all, I don't think I would, of my own volition, like rewatch this unless I was just watching with somebody casually. Not that it was like bad or anything. Like I very much enjoyed it. It was like very interesting to see like the different styles and the different kinds of storytelling. I guess I also think the Wachowskis also wrote a couple of sketches, like a couple of the storylines in this movie. I guess when they were, because I think this
They
movie
did.
was in beginning concept, like when they were touring to promote the Reloaded and Revolution. But um, yeah, it was definitely, I would say, of all the Matrix movies, is one of my favorite ones, I guess, but definitely one that I would have to be.
I guess just speaking personally, it's just not my thing. I'm not gonna hate on it, but it's just not for me.
Yeah, it's like I think it's for the fans who really they can't get enough. They need more Matrix in their bodies, so they're gonna play the video games and they're gonna watch the animated anthology and really just take it all in.
That's the thing. Like,
Yeah,
if you're a fucking nerd, then you'll probably like this. Like, if you're like, I don't know what a pussy looks like, you'll love the Animatrix. But if you're cool,
oh my
then
gosh.
Well, I thought we were gonna get some pussy, but we almost got that PlayStation 2 era graphics. Yeah, we I thought that one dude was gonna like be dicks out, but it turns out he had a little speedo on in the Matrix in that really bad 3D one.
Oh my gosh.
what was the one
A
with?
disappointment.
I forget which one it was. Maybe this was another decent one where there was like the black guy and the Asian girl fighting, and they like
That's what I'm
cut.
talking about. Yeah, they cut
Okay,
each
okay,
other's
that's what I
clothes off.
thought.
Yeah,
That
he had a
was
speedo on because they played it cool. Like he sliced near his crotch, but they didn't show it. So I was like, oh, he's dicks out. But then they did show him, and he had a tiny speedo on. I'm like, well, oh well.
Yeah, that one was ridiculous, but I had fun with it. I liked it.
It was hilariously bad. The fact that they start the whole anthology with that one specifically is really funny to me.
Is that the one it started with for you? I think it was the last one for me.
Really? See, I have it on DVD, and I just hit play all, and they were
Oh,
numbered like one through
interesting.
nine. That was my first one.
I watched on HBO Max. I wonder if they're organized differently on different things.
Oh, they might be because we had it on DVD, so that's possible. Interesting. Maybe they realized that one was bad, so they put it at the end on HBO Max.
Too many people would turn it off and they won't get their streaming numbers.
I mean, yeah, I mean, there might be something behind that. I don't know. Yeah, because they realized, like, oh man, the graphics look sick in 2003. In 2022, they don't. So that might have been it. 2D animation definitely ages a lot better, and this anthology is a good showcase of that.
Are we ready to move on to Resurrection?
I think we are.
They should have
Let's
called
do
this
it.
one, because they're going for the RE titles for everything. They should have called it Matrix Retread or Retread.
There's a few R words I could associate with this one.
I wasn't going to say it because I'm trying to get into heaven, but
Oh,
It's
good
too
gosh.
late for you, Todd. What are you talking about? You're in the Matrix. There is no heaven.
that's I thought it, so I'm just as bad.
All right, Maureen, I want you to start because I feel like you like this one the most of the three of us. So I want positivity first.
Oof. Oh, that's rough, buddy. Like I said earlier, like, I'm not supposed to discuss these movies, but um, all in all, I really enjoyed this one. I didn't think I would because typically I'm pretty like underwhelmed by reboots of any kind. There have been very few that I've actually really truly liked, and this was one that I was very pleasantly surprised on. I really enjoyed the idea that Neo and Trinity sort of get reabsorbed into the Matrix, and the whole he's designing a game based on actual events, and he's slowly coming into sort of recognizing that, and he's trying to go back and I'll discuss that in a second, but I liked that, and I liked some of the kind of how meta it was, like referring to like a lot of callbacks to like the first movie, like in the modal with the I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but the guy who is the like the new Morpheus character and like all of that, like where it's like it's like dialogue wise, like it's all the same, but like sort of there's sort of subtle inconsistencies. Like I really enjoyed it, like visually, and I really enjoyed like Neil Patrick Harris's character and how he's basically like the new architect, and he's very close to Neo, where like in his regard, I like that the closer you are to danger, the farther you kind of mentality that that character took, and yeah, all in all, I just really like this movie. I don't know. I like that it had so many callbacks to the Matrix, and it did, yeah, of course, call back to the movies too. But I feel like for me, I could easily go from Matrix to Resurrections and just kind of skip the other two. But what do you guys think?
Do you want me to go, Eric? I think you're the most negative, so if we're going to go in descending order.
Dude, it's so amazing to be the most negative because I'm never the most negative. It's
I feel,
always you, Todd. So I'm glad that we've switched for once. You go ahead.
Eric, I feel like we agree like on almost everything.
I
Break your heart
enjoyed the.
tonight.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I enjoyed the first half of the movie quite a bit. I had a lot of fun with the meta commentary and Neo living life, and it kind of felt like the beginning of the first movie, which is my personal favorite part of the movie, as he slowly finds out what's going on. I liked that stuff quite a bit. The satire wasn't brilliant. It wasn't the most clever comedy, but it was entertaining. And even though I enjoyed the movie overall. For me, there's a pretty big drop off in interest after he finds out he's Neo and he's with the crew. Then it just felt like another Matrix movie or another Matrix sequel, I should say. And even those parts I had fun with well enough, but I wasn't enthralled or anything. There was definitely like a drop off as it went on, and by the end of it, um, when it's kind of like a comedy bit, and then they're like going Matrix, John Matrix, and Neo and Trinity go to make their own world, and they're talking like a sky full of rainbows and stuff like that. It kind of hit me like how sad it is how the series has become a complete mockery of itself, and I know that's a point of the movie, so it's like it's really conflicting for me. I enjoyed the movie. It was probably my favorite sequel in terms of sheer rewatchability, but I respect it less than the other sequels because those put in honest effort. This just like was given a prompt by Warner Brothers. Like it's like a kid that got a homework assignment and just fucked off with it.
Yeah, I feel the same way in that respect. There's even a line early on in the movie where, in character, they're talking about, oh, if we don't make this fourth Matrix video game, Keanu, oh, the Warner Brothers is going to make it anyway. And that was the moment where I was like, oh, this movie has no passion. There's just nothing. This movie's just like a soulless husk. And I was never disproved as I kept watching it. This is definitely my least favorite of all the Matrix movies. I did enjoy, on like cringy comedy value alone, first like 30 minutes because I think it was genuinely kind of funny that he was a video game designer. And fun fact, he won the Game Awards with his Matrix video game series, and they actually had the trophy, the real life Game Awards trophy, in this damn movie just a month, or actually a couple weeks after Keanu and Carrie-Anne Moss were in the Game Awards in real life. So I guess cross promotion. Hallelujah. That's just the thing. This movie just feels so corporate, so hacked together. Only one of the directors came back because I assume the other one didn't want anything to do with this one. They edit in clips from the other movies just like haphazardly into this film. It's just so bizarre. What other film just like puts actual footage from the other movies in like it's a soap opera, like it's Days of Our Lives? Like, oh yeah, do you remember this when this thing happened in a slightly better movie? And I don't like the other sequels either.
It's
This
funny.
one just felt like it was trying so goddamn hard. And then Todd, I agree with you. Once they got out of the Matrix and they went back to another nameless band of extras doing rebellion crap in another lost city of Atlantis, I just did not care about next to anything. I thought it was kind of interesting what they were trying to do with the new villain, because the idea of, oh, you're stronger, you provide more energy if you want something and yearn for something and can't have it. I think there was a plot there. There was an idea there. There was a okay villain there. The way it just kind of resolves is just, it's just like putty. It's just like you had something but it slipped out of your fingers, and then it just ended up feeling like this movie was just, there wasn't much passion behind it. I didn't feel anything watching this movie. I really didn't.
It's funny you mentioned the other clips in this because I was thinking today about in the I think it was the 90s, 2000s roughly, but mostly the 90s, like the home video era. Some like cheapo sequels would be clip show movies. So like you have clip show episodes on TV shows back in the day when they had to pad the show out. They would do that for
Right.
movies. So like Full Moon Pictures, the Puppet Master. I think that has multiple clip show movies. I don't know because I haven't seen them. But that used to be a thing, and it's insane to me that they ever existed, and it's funny to me that they no longer do.
But that they brought it back in a huge blockbuster in the end of 2021. Like, just the idea of that coming back is just so weird.
I do
Man,
want to.
I really wanted to like this movie more than I did. I was rooting for this movie because rewatching the Matrix films, I was like, oh crap, they get worse and worse. My order is one, two, three, four. Like I genuinely think they get worse and worse. So I was hoping Resurrections was at least the second best. I wanted it to be like really, really bad. it didn't have like the style and the action of the originals either. So it just kind of, to me, it doesn't really feel like it has much of an identity either.
One thing I do want to echo is I think Neil Patrick Harris, his character, how he's set up, being a psychologist, and particularly like the scene where the bullet's slowly going towards Carrie Ann Moss's head, and he's like giving this like villain monologue as it happens. I think he has a lot of fun with the character, and he's fun to watch. I was a little bit nervous about the casting because it was such a like stunt like nerd cred casting kind of thing. It felt like it could have been, but I think he
Right.
added a lot to the movie personally.
I think that was probably my favorite scene. That was the part where I was like, okay, the movie has like an idea. It has like, okay, once they kind of had that scene, I was maybe feeling like the movie would get an upswing. But then the ending is basically just a lot of force pushing, and then Tiffany rejects Chad, which am I even saying that? That's hilarious. Tiffany rejects Chad, the Matrix movie, number 4, and then becomes Trinity again, and then they do like big old chase. Then she's the one because the power of love made her the one as well. Or maybe she was always the one because her love and faith made Neo the one. And it's just like, I don't really know what they're trying to say with these movies anymore.
I Yeah, I don't like that either. That it's like I don't know because the whole savior Neo. I mean, his name is literally an anagram of one. Like he was the one, and now all of a sudden it's Trinity, and Trinity's a cool character. And Carrie Ann Moss, she added a lot to the series. I hear she learned a lot of her own stunts and everything. It's no like disrespect towards her or the character, but it felt like it
Right.
cheapened Neo's at a certain point. But I think what they're trying to do, that I heard, is it was trying to be like a binary. So like, if he's the one, she's the zero that goes with it or something. And thematically, maybe
Okay.
that could be cool with different characters that weren't previously established to be known in a certain context. Like, I guess that's my thing. We know who Neo is, we know who Trinity is. And that's kind of changed and put to the test to a certain extent in this movie. And even though it's a new Matrix, I get it. The rules are slightly changed. But to me, it almost felt like they pushed this theme because they wanted to push the theme of a weird cyberpunk romance. And that's fine, but I just feel like with these characters, it felt a little bit forced.
That's the thing. I never thought their romance was that great in the trilogy to begin with. So the fact that this movie is like fully focused on it was also just kind of odd to me because that never felt like the central premise of the movies. Central premise of the movies was basically waken from the cave and fight in the rebellion. Like that was what the Matrix story was. And in this one, it's not really about that anymore. At the end of this movie, it's like they fly off to the Matrix, and then it's like, do they even care about freeing minds anymore? Like, I thought that that's what we were trying to do this whole time, and I feel like it just kind of got it lost sight of that original story.
One genuinely good idea I really like, though, is all the Matrix people being programmed to suicide jump out of buildings to become like projectile obstacles. I thought that was a pretty insane concept in
Yeah, that
fun
was unsettling.
settings.
So
Yeah, I know. They kind of gloss over it pretty quickly too. It's like, oh, we're just doing the happening now. We're doing it.
yeah,
I'm
like
sorry.
that whole like swarm function.
What did you say a little bit ago, Marine? I didn't quite catch you.
Oh, I was just saying like the swarm function. I was just like
Oh,
that whole everyone jumping out of buildings was just extremely unsettling. I think there was some parts of that whole sequence where I just had to look away. I'm like, I can't see another person just like face plant into the ground. I'm like, this is just a lot.
Oh, it's pretty disturbing. And it actually makes a lot of sense in terms of like a computer program, like, oh, program all the different variables to self-destruct at once. Like, okay, that's actually kind of neat in the terms of like a computer world. If they had, I like those kinds of ideas, so they did have spurts of creativity in this sequel. Just think upon rewatch, movie will not get any better either. I'm a little usually I'm really positive when I go into the theater for the first time, watch a new movie. I'm like, yeah, that was awesome. Then usually my criticisms become more apparent on a second watch or a third watch. I don't even want to watch this ever again. That is a bad sign because usually I'm tougher on my second or third watch.
Yeah, I definitely don't think I'll be rewatching this movie. I could see myself watching the first three all again, just for a fun time. But this one, even though I think it was the most enjoyable sequel, it just kind of feels like a gimmick in and of itself where you watch it to find out how are they going to make another Matrix sequel with the dead cast. And then, are they really going to make a lark of this big budget sequel? And you see them like, oh yeah, they do. This is a complete fuck off
The
joke
answer
prank
is
movie.
they put them back together like Legos, Todd.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, I feel like all the excitement of the movie is kind of over once you know what they're doing. And that's not even like it. I don't know. It's almost like you see the how the magician does his trick, and then you're not interested in it anymore.
Right. That's the thing too. I think this movie had a really awesome like initial trailer. I thought like that's actually kind of what pulled me into the movie and like made me want to rewatch the series because I think that first trailer was really solid.
Well, I just want to say, what happened to Michael B. Jordan? I thought he was supposed to be Morpheus in this, and I like the guy that plays Morpheus in it. I don't see people saying he did a good job or anything, but personally, I liked his performance. I thought he was a little bit hokey and different take on the character, but I didn't mind that for the movie that this was. But regardless, like the individual lines of dialogue or anything, I think the actor did a very good job. But I thought Michael B. Jordan was supposed to be in this, and then I guess he wasn't.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but I agree. I mean, none of the actors really did poorly. They were really just acting with the script that they were given. I don't think there was like any like truly awful performances in here. I think just script just doesn't work with me on a story level, and that's what brings the rest of it down for me. Maureen, say something positive about this movie because I don't want to shit on it too much.
No, you're fine. I think at some point, Eric, you said it was kind of blockbustery, and I think it is. I think this movie as a whole is just a blockbuster, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but I think when you look at it in relation to the other Matrix movies, yeah, it falls short. And I think in a lot of ways, like some parts of the plot are half baked, or some things are just kind of like you have like this whole slew of like nameless extras and certain things like Niobe like talking about how old she is like every 5 minutes and stuff like oh my gosh, Dylan like literally kept track of like how old she's like you keep there she goes talking about complaining about being old again. But
I don't know if you can tell by my thousands of wrinkles, but I'm damn old.
no. But I will say as a standalone movie, I really liked it as a whole. And for me, I with certain issues of the plot, like I think as a standalone the plot was pretty tight. I was able to easily get from like beginning to middle to end without having to jump through so many mental hoops. And I kind of appreciate that because I feel like in Reloaded I kind of got lost in a lot of the philosophy, whereas like with Resurrection I didn't get lost. I know some of it was like satire and some of it was kind of like, okay, this is like low hanging fruit. But all of it's a standalone. I think it was a pretty great movie. I don't think it was like a 10, but I would say it was at least a 7.
Maureen, I actually think you have an interesting point to kind of add to what you said. I think Resurrections works almost better as a standalone movie than a sequel. But I think if you look at it as a sequel, which I definitely did because I had just finished rewatching all of them, the big things and some other things are drastically different. But if you kind of like have it like widely separated in your mind as to just like a brand new story, I almost wish this was a brand new story with like new characters, but just exploring the Matrix world in a different way. But obviously, you could not capitalize on Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss and all that stuff if you had done it that way, but it would have been interesting.
Yeah, I do think that the worst parts of the movie are in relation to the other movies in the series, which on one hand may be unfair, not to judge it enough on its own merits. But on the other hand, like one reviewing trick that I'd always heard was to, and this is in terms of music, is to review every album as though it was the artist's debut album or the first you'd ever heard from them. And
Right.
I try to kind of everything, try to separate and view things on their own terms and think like, what did the creator intend to do with this movie, and didn't they succeed in accomplishing that goal, rather than what did I want out of this movie and did they give me what I want. Because ultimately that's it goes into the artist's vision and everything, and I didn't make it, so of course it's going to have different intentions that I might have done if I had done it. Otherwise I would make my
Right.
own movie. But the interesting thing about this movie is that it's hard to separate it from the other movies because it's a commentary on those other movies. It's a commentary on the Matrix as a pop culture phenomenon. You can't really view it on its own terms because it can't exist without the other movies. Not even as a plot continuation thing, but just, I mean, it's so self-referential. And on the other hand, I think the movie does it succeed in doing what the creator intended, which is to fulfill a contractual obligation and maybe have fun at the expense of the material, I guess, is what I take from it. Yeah, I guess it did that. That doesn't mean that it's a
Right.
perfect success, but it's kind of the difference between, being too cool to try. And that's the issue with postmodernism in general, is that yes, it succeeded at not trying, which I had fun with in a fuck off way, but I don't respect it in the way that I would respect it if they actually put effort forth to make a compelling sequel.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of the unfortunate thing is that if that in-universe line is to be believed, Warner Brothers would have made another video game without us. Um, and then so the one of the Wachowskis did just jump in on this and basically say, well, if you're gonna burn the ship down, I'm gonna be there alongside it and make something instead of just not being involved. I guess that's just kind of like a sad world that we live in. I mean, it just there are sequels out there that truly do build on the foundation of what came before, and I'm a huge fan of stories coming together across multiple episodes, multiple movies. I think that's really satisfying when done right. So when you get a franchise and you put like 8 hours of your time in watching something and it just kind of turns into something completely different, I mean, there is a level of disappointment there, and it's really hard to it really is hard to separate it. But I agree, every movie should, in theory, be its own thing that can be reviewed. Also, like you said, this might be the most self-referential movie of all time. Because like stuff like Star Wars and stuff has tons of Easter eggs and all that. In The Force Awakens, they didn't show you clips of A New Hope. They didn't like show you the ending of Return of the Jedi. You know what I mean? So it's like this movie was begging to be compared to what came before, and I agree that that is maybe the biggest detriment here.
Ironically, this past year, another fourth film in a franchise came out that had a pivotal scene in which characters interact in front of a projection screen in which clips from previous content is shown. The fourth Evangelion rebuild movie came out this year and did the same thing, and I don't want to say it did it better, but I mean, because I saw it first, so like I was more interested the first time with that. I don't care for the fourth Evangelion rebuild personally. I'm very, very mixed on it. But I think that scene is one particular highlight of the movie where what it's trying to do does work. But it was funny to me to see two fourth movies in a series both pull that same stunt in 1 year. Or 1 year's time frame, I guess, whatever.
I was not aware of that. That's bizarre. What a weird trope that's being created, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of enjoy it. Like, even if it does continue happening and it becomes hack, like how bisexual lighting became hack after a certain while. Like, I don't know. I think naturally it's just visually compelling. Even the Bo Burnham movie Inside kind of does that within itself, where you'll be watching a scene and then see that he's watching that scene on the projection in his room. It's not quite the
Oh
same,
yeah,
but
but for a stand-up comedy special, like that hits completely differently than like an in-universe fantasy like saga. But I get what you're saying.
yeah, I just mean as a cinematic technique. I think it's powerful. I think it works inherently, even if the context that it's placed in doesn't always, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you can use that device with like excellent context, I would be interested to see how that would actually work. I know Bo Burnham's Inside is hilarious. I, I will agree with that.
Yeah, I don't want to get off topic, but it's funny to me because I'm not really like a huge fan of Bill Burnham's comedy, but as a filmmaker, I think he's like one of the most innovative, important filmmakers of our time.
Yeah, that special was great.
That and
And now I'm in a good mood again.
Eighth Grade.
Did anybody else have anything to say on the Matrix Resurrections or scores or ranking or anything else that we want to do?
Yeah, I'd like to do scores and ranking. Why not? Marine, why don't you start?
I had to rank them. I would say definitely The Matrix, the original number one. For me, it was I would say a 10 out of 10. Like initially it wasn't, but like throughout like reconsidering reviewing, I initially rated it kind of like a 7 because I was like, I wasn't really all too impressed. I'm not the demographic, and then I realized I'm like, holy shit, this is really ambitious. This is if I could rate it higher, I would. And then I would say Resurrections for a lot of the reasons I stated. Um, and then I would say were you including the Animatrix in this?
Nah. I
Okay,
don't think
cool.
it works as like a full movie, so
Gotcha. Then I would say probably Revolution, just because I know it's weird because it really didn't have much to do with the Matrix, but as far as like Reloaded goes, Reloaded to me was just kind of a blur, and it seemed like it was kind of rushed in some places and stalled in others. So that's really the deciding factor. Are you guys?
I guess I'll go next. Which I already alluded to. Mine is the Downward Spiral. I like one the most. I don't like one as much as most people though, because I think it can drag. I think it's got some characters that are really one dimensional. I give the original Matrix a 7 out of 10. It's still a passing grade. Still a good movie. It does just not hit me in the same way that it does for most people. Still a good film. Then Reloaded for me, a lot of the same style and action of the first, but with a lot more bloat. 6 out of 10. Then would be Revolutions, a 5 out of 10. Um, it could have been higher than Reloaded had it actually had the main cast in it. It just doesn't for half the movie, and that tanks it so hard for me. I just don't care. It's a 5 out of 10, and then the Resurrections. Just I wish I liked it, but it makes me feel sad and bad when I even think about it. So it's a 3 out of 10 for the Resurrections.
For me, and one thing, yeah, with the Animatrix, like it's hard to review because you have to review each individual short almost in order to accurately
Right.
assess it. Unless you just want to like, what's it called? Put the score together and come up with some calculation. But I'm not interested in doing that, and I don't remember them well enough to rate them individually. But yeah, the first one obviously for me, I think that it's really the definition of like a great blockbuster and something that pushed the medium forward in the technology and how we viewed action scenes, aesthetics of its time period, ideas in the mainstream lexicon. I think really if you want to ask for better than The Matrix is a blockbuster, other than like personal taste, like I totally get why somebody wouldn't be into it, especially today and how it's not. I think it holds up, but it's also dated in certain ways, like anything made 20 years ago is going to be. I think really like if you want to get better than that, you're going to be looking like Jaws, Jurassic Park, Star Wars territory. I think in terms of a mainstream Hollywood action movie, it's about as good as it gets. Uh, I want to give it like a 9.5. I'm just not 10 on it personally, but I have a lot of reverence and respect for it and what it did. And this is in terms of enjoyment, just to be clear. After that, for me, it's probably The Matrix 3. There were, was it, I don't, Requiem or whatever the fuck it is.
Revolutions.
Revolutions, yeah. Um, my thing with it is that I think it's got really strong strengths in it. I think it's a much easier pill to swallow than Reloaded. I think that I definitely agree with Eric that it loses track of the main characters and that hurts it a lot. But I can forgive it more for that than, like, for me, I really do not like the second act in Reloaded. I do not like that Frenchman character at all. I don't like a lot of just like the pseudo intellectual babble that's just it's too simple and too drawn out a lot of the time, I think, where it's almost needlessly convoluted. But like there's a point like it's even a good scene that I like where a character takes Neo down to see like how the machines function in Zion, and he talks about it, and he says something, and like Neo's talking like his student, and it's such like a clearly scripted lesson learned moment, like a teacher had written out his ideal, his like teaching fantasy of telling a student about this concept of free will. That's just like rough for me. And I just honestly, I think Matrix 3 is a fun movie for the most part, and I enjoyed it well enough. After that is The Matrix 2, which I actually think is the most respectable of all the sequels. I think that the Wachowskis really got ambitious. I think they lost sight. They lost the big picture. But what they're doing individually with the action scenes, with a lot of the direction, I really appreciate the main cast. Like I said, I think Lawrence Fishburne really carries a lot of this movie when Keanu's not on screen. With that said, it's too much of a good thing. All the things that you like about The Matrix 1 are in Reloaded, but just too much of it to the point where it just kind of makes you sick, and it's just kind of a slog. Actually, no, I apologize. That one actually comes after. So for me, it's 1, 3, 4, and then 2. I forgot that 4 existed for a second. That's not a joke. I legitimately did. Yeah, the fourth, whatever the fuck, Rebirth or whatever. That movie I think is the most fun to watch out of all of them, but I just have no reverence for it. It's just kind of a donut where like the first few bites are really sweet and fun, and by the end of it, like you're halfway through the donut, do I want to finish this? It's a bit too much. I don't know. I liked the movie, but yeah. So I don't know. So for me, it'd be a 9.5 for the first. I'm just gonna rate them now because I've lost track of these fucking series. The second one, I give like a 6 out of 10. The third, I give a 6.5, and the fourth, I probably give like honestly a 7, just because it's just watchable on a 7 out of 10 level. I don't know. It's all relative. I didn't put much thought into the numbers.
That same donut gave me the runs. Me food poisoning. I can't eat donuts anymore.
That'd just be like an espresso shot into the toilet. One donut.
I like that the Indian girl grew up and was in the movie. That was like one moment. I was like, I feel rewarded for wasting 10 hours of my life watching these movies.
Yeah, that was cool. I like that.
Yeah. Oh.
Does anybody have any closing comments?
I got nothing. I was trying to find a quote, and I found a lot of things that I didn't understand.
I actually,
Maureen, red pill, blue pill.
Oh, that's such a loaded question.
Is it a reloaded question?
Stop.
A reloaded question would be, if you take the red pill, is it even your choice? Think about that for 2.5 hours, and then get rewarded by a to be concluded title card.
Think about that for exactly 138 minutes.
Nope, I'm done.
One thing I want to bring up, and this is on Hulu. There's a documentary called "A Glitch in the Matrix," and there's a lot of people. I know people who believe this shit, and it just shows the degradation of our culture, in my opinion, in so many ways. Where it's a bit popular theory now that we live in the Matrix, and they'll show like a picture of like a bird that's floating, seemingly like in place, and it's not moving its wings much, and they're like, this proves that life's a simulation, this was a glitch. And the documentary is actually like pretty decent for the most part. I've got major issues with it, but there's one section in particular about a kid that was like convinced to kill his family because he thought the Matrix was real. That's really disturbing and like tastefully done, in my opinion, and compelling. But like, I just want to say with that whole thing where people now are like taking like the Matrix and making that into a religion of sorts or a worldview, I think you're a fucking idiot. And I think you need real like religion or something. Like, become a fucking Muslim or something. Don't be like, no, there's a glitch in the Matrix and the world's a video game. And like, shut up, loser. That's my closing comment.
Matrixism. That I like found out about that like 20 minutes before, right? And there really isn't much about it. It's just like a paragraph on the Wikipedia page where it's also called like the Path of the One. I think they just talk about just doing LSD a lot. That's really all I could find. That definitive about it.
That's funny because that is how I feel about like obviously I'm being I'm elevating my actual thoughts for comedy, but that does give me those vibes of like people in college smoking pot and be like, hey man, do you ever think life's like a Matrix? Like, it's total like stoner philosophy.
Absolutely. Look, the vocabulary that we're using to like prove these dumb conspiracies like didn't even exist 30 years ago. Like, I'll realize this, right?
Right?
Yeah, but that's because like they didn't want it to exist 30 years ago.
They didn't program it into us until recent.
They knew we'd catch on if they gave it to us in the 70s because, I don't know, Bill Hicks was alive and he would have figured it out, man. He knew everything. And so did George Carlin. He was probably an oracle.
I like that idea, actually. George Carlin is an oracle.
It'd be funny if like I accidentally like converted you to this as I was mocking it sarcastically.
I think that'd be really on brand for the podcast, to be honest. Like, man, you know what? Actually, I can see this. You know, I was agnostic, but now, holy shit, I think I'm gonna follow the Matrix. What is the Matrix religion called? The Matrixism?
Yeah. It's like Matrixism and the Path of the One. So next episode, we all pursue the Path of the One.
I'm looking on Wikipedia here, and the article I'm seeing for it is called Virginity.
Virginity and LSD.
It's so funny though, because like I say this now, but if I was like out at like a social gathering, not on the internet, where I could pretend to be tough, and like someone brought it up, I'd be like, oh, that's interesting, cool. Yeah, I have thought about that.
I can imagine you one of our college get-togethers, like, oh yeah. Derek's like, yeah, guys, we're in the Matrix. And we all be like, oh yeah, no, I agree. That's cool.
I wasn't gonna say it.
I think everybody who actually believes in that shit needs to take like one philosophy class. Like, get Dr. Phillips in there and just like the philosophy 101, and then you'll like be a little less existential, at least a little bit.
You know, I guess that's that's the core of it, right? Like their heads would like blow up if they read real philosophy. And that's a good recommendation. Is like, if you think the Matrix is mind blowing or whatever, and like they are clever movies, and I think especially the first one, like the way it implements these themes, even though, you know, like Red Pill today has been co-opted into like 100 different contexts or whatever, like I do think that it's well utilized in the context of that movie, and the sequels sometimes have good ideas and bad ones. But if you like the Matrix, like, it was inspired by real philosophy. Pick up a fucking book, please.
Yeah, you nerds, pick up a fucking book.
Hopefully there aren't a lot of illiterate nerds that listen to this podcast, or else we're out of views.
We're running out of views. We can't siphon off of our viewers anymore. They're in their pods. Anybody who listens to this podcast is in one of those pods with the pink amniotic fluid.
We just come back week after week as part of some thought experiment.
Yep.
We've had this conversation
Making
6
everybody
different
moist.
times.
Maureen, why don't you close it out like a badass, like Trinity?
I'm not that bad. But I can share a quote that I found on the internet that relates to the Matrix.
This better not be another
Thank God.
Hitler quote.
Oh my gosh, not this time. Thanks. That's actually Descartes. He says, everything I have accepted up to now as being absolutely true and assured, I have learned from or through the senses. But I have sometimes found that these senses played me false. It is prudent to never trust entirely those who have deceived us. Thus, what I thought I had seen with my eyes, I actually grasped solely with the faculty of judgment which is in my mind.
If that doesn't prove we have robot overlords that don't know what does.
This is somewhat of a side, but nothing against Descartes. But there's a meme about some user on a porn site. His name was Rene Descartes, and that was his avatar. It was like a portrait of him, and he will comment on all these porno videos. Give her the D. So it's become a meme to have like Rene Descartes, and like as a quote, it says "Give her the D."
Oh gosh.
And a part of me, I almost thought you were gonna say that for a second.
The internet's truly a special place.
I'm Todd Crawford.
I'm Eric Zavinski.
And I'm out.